Hey there everyone, welcome back. I'm Rick Fussell and this is the Ingrain Workshop. In today's video, we're going to be taking this ordinary plain tissue box and we're going to be transforming it into this decorative, beautiful wood tissue box. That's coming up next here at the Ingrain Workshop. Okay, so this is the piece of black walnut that we're going to be using for this project. It's 7 inches wide by 36 inches long. It's got a knot right here in the middle, which I'm going to try to avoid. The thickness is 3/4 of an inch. And for our project, we're going to need a 1/2 inch thick tissue box top and then a 3/8 inch thick tissue box walls. So the walls of our tissue box are going to be at 3/8 of an inch. The top's going to be at a 1/2 inch thick. So the first thing we're going to do is set up a planer sled and run this through the planer. It's always better when you're planing pieces to a smaller thickness to go ahead and just use a planer sled, especially when you start getting down to 3/8 of an inch. Probably be okay with 1/2 of an inch. But 3/8 of an inch is getting a little close. So I'm just going to put it on a sled, hot glue it down to a sled, run it through the thickness planer until I get it down to a 1/2 inch. Once I get it down to a 1/2 inch, I'm going to look at the board, decide where to cut the top out of, cut the top out of the board, and then I'll run the remainder of the board through the thickness planer to get it down to 3/8 of an inch thick. We now have our board planed down to a 1/2 inch thick. The next thing I need to do is cut out for the top. Just the rough dimensions for the top is 7 by 7. So again, these are just rough dimensions. So I'm just going to mark it here with the chalk. And then I'm going to cut this out over at the miter saw. Then I'm going to take the remaining piece, put it on the planer sled, and then run it back through the planer to get down to 3/8 of an inch, which is the thickness of our sides. Okay, so now with the top cut out, and this is just the leftover piece which we're going to be using for the sides, I went ahead and just placed it on top of my planer sled. This is just going to give me a little bit more thickness when I run it through the planer, since we are going to be planing this down to 3/8 of an inch. And I'm just going to use some hot glue just to fasten it to the sled. So now with some hot glue applied, it's now fastened to the planer sled. And so now we can take the planer sled over to the planer and then go ahead and plane this piece down to 3/8 of an inch. Okay, now we have the top planed down to a 1/2 inch, and then we have our sides planed down to 3/8 of an inch. We're going to take and put these in my joiner sled, run them through the table saw and joint one edge, and then we'll put that finished edge up against the table saw fence and we'll joint the other edge, and at the same time we'll cut them down to their finished lengths and widths. So here at the miter saw, I went ahead and set up a stop at 5 3/16 of an inch, and that's going to be the widths of our sides, just so I can make repetitive cuts and cut all 4 sides at that exact measurement, and that measurement again is 5 3/16. So now we're back here at the table saw. I've got the top, and I'm going to cut the top at 6 1/4 inches square. So now with our top cut at 6 1/4 inches square, we're now going to rip the sides. We had previously cut them at 5 3/16 over at the miter saw. Now, as far as the length goes, we're going to cut them down to 5 1/2 inches here at the table saw. So now, as I mentioned earlier, we've got our top cut at 6 1/4 inches square. We have our sides cut at 5 3/16 of an inch and 5 1/2 inches by 5 1/2 inches. So now with everything cut to their finished lengths and widths, so to joint the sides, we're going to use box joints, and that's the next cut we're going to make here at the table saw. We're going to swap out our regular blade for a dado stack, and we're going to cut our box joints at 3 1/8 inches thick. I'll leave a link in the video here which goes over the box joint jig that I made the other day for this particular project, and that's what we're going to use to cut the joints on the sides. So before we cut the box joints on the sides, I went ahead and laid the sides out with all the grain patterns matching across the boards. I labeled the boards A, B, C, and D. And then I also numbered the edges 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1. That way I'll know what sides fit with what joints. Now we're ready to go ahead and start cutting our box joints on the table saw. So in the link to my box joint video, which I left in this video, I go into more detail on exactly how to cut these box joints. And the method that I prefer is to cut the two adjoining sides at the same time. I just think you get a better fit. And you can see here's all 4 sides cut, and the box joints aren't too loose or too tight, which will allow for a good glue up. So during the glue up, it's going to get messy whenever you're trying to glue up box joints. So just go ahead and be liberal with the glue, and make sure you have a wet rag to wipe off the excess. And what I like to do is put the two halves together separately. That way I can clean the inside of the joint, and then I'll put the two halves together and clamp them up. And then once I get it clamped up, we'll let them sit overnight in the clamps before we take them back out and start sanding them. And next we'll take and focus our attention on the top. So while our box dries, we're going to take and turn our attention to the top. And what I did off video was just cut out a template. I just made an oval template out of a piece of 1/8 inch plywood. I centered the oval on the template. The template is 6 1/4 inches square, the same size as our top. And now what I'll do is I'll just use some 2-sided tape and fasten it to the top. But before I do that, I'm going to trace the oval onto the top, drill a hole, and then with my scroll saw, you could do it with a jigsaw, and cut out the inside part of the oval, leaving it heavy on the line. That way what I can do is, once the inside of the oval is cut out, I can then stick the template to the top of the top, and then go to my router table, and using a flush trim bit, I can go ahead and just route and clean up the inside of the oval. Now I have a hole here, and I'll put my scroll saw blade through here and cut out the inside of the oval, again leaving it heavy so I can finish it up over at the router table. Okay, so I have a 1/4 inch round over bit in the router, and now we're just going to round over the top of the oval and then the bottom of the oval. Next, with our 1/4 inch round over bit in the router, I've raised the bit up a little bit because I want to put a little bit of a profile on the top all the way around the exterior of the top. So I'm going to cut it with probably about a 1/16 of an inch vertical profile at the top. And once I get it routed, I'll show you and you can see how it kind of turns out. It just gives it a little different aesthetic value. So as you can see here, it just gives it a little bit of a lip here at the top, and then it's just a 1/4 inch round over. That's probably about a 1/16 to 3/32 of an inch all the way around the perimeter of the top. Now with the tissue body dry, we can take it out of the clamps and start the sanding process. I'm going to start with my belt sander at 120 grit and then work my way to the orbital sander and then just work down the grits. Okay, so now with the sanding complete, I didn't want to bore you with too much sanding, but I did start at 120 grit over at the belt sander, and then with the random orbital sander, I stepped it up to 150, and then 180, and then 220. 220 was my final grit, sanding both the box sides and the top. So now we're just going to center the top, which should be about a 1/2 inch overhang on all 4 sides, and then we're simply going to just glue it to the top. This isn't anything structural or anything like that. I don't think we need to put any type of fasteners through it. I think if we just glue the box to the top, it should be fine. That's what we're going to do next. Once we get the top glued onto the box, then we'll be ready to just put on our finish. Okay, now that we have the top glued onto the box, we're going to go ahead and just remove our clamps. Next, I'm going to take and just hand sand. I'm probably going to spray some water just to raise the grain, and then just hand sand the top to probably 300 grit, and then we'll be ready to apply just a lacquer finish. That's all I'm going to put on here is just a high gloss lacquer finish, and then that'll be it, and that will wrap up the tissue box cover project. Well, that's going to wrap up this video. I did want to share one thing. This is a tissue box that my dad had built probably in the early 90s, and he was big into watching all those PBS woodworking shows, Norm Abram, New Yankee Workshop, and there were a bunch others during that time. I used to record them on VHS for him. So he's been long gone, but this is a way to keep his memory alive by doing projects. I hope that you do projects for your family members to keep your memory alive. If you like this video, then please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and you like DIY and woodworking projects, then please consider subscribing, and don't forget to hit that bell icon. That way you'll be notified of all our upcoming videos. If you're an existing subscriber, then we really appreciate the support you've given the channel by viewing these videos and by clicking on the affiliate links. I'm Rick with the Ingrain Workshop. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.